everyone, it's Raina. So this video is for those people who have their natal Jupiter in the sign of Gemini. I'm one of them, so maybe I'm an expert on this placement. Jupiter is the planet of luck. It's the planet of opportunity, of growth, expansion is typically what is said. But I like the word growth. I happened to see it when I was looking at this site, codexastrology.com. Now I can't find it. Could have sworn I saw the word growth. But anyway, this is something where we're looking at a non-personal planet that still exerts influence over you in some area. And so that's why I'm putting the title, where are you lucky in life? Or, how can you become lucky? And by luck, that's kind of where it gets a little bit tricky, because I almost wanted to write, where can you make your luck? And I really do think it is making your luck, because if it was just pure luck, you wouldn't have to lift a finger. You would just okay, it's dropping in my lap, so why would I even need this video? It's going to happen regardless. So I do think you have to gravitate towards, what this represents in order for it to fully blossom, if you will. And we're talking about Gemini here. So we're talking about a mutable air sign. All air signs are involving the mind and communication. So with Gemini, we're really talking about communication, because Gemini is ruled by Mercury. Gemini is the ruler of the third house. So Mercury is the ruler of the third house, and this has to do with mundane knowledge. It has to do with, teaching and learning is basically what is described as the third house, and also and writing is a particular one that I can think of, but it's speaking. And also anything having to do with using one's hands, manual dexterity. Gemini rules the hands, and so things that you do with fine motor skills, perhaps, certain crafts, maybe like jewelry making, things like that, which is something that I've been wanting to do. See, and I've got that there. What else? But there was something else I was saying. Oh, well, I was going to say like the media, so disseminating information, not necessarily teaching people all the time, although it can be teaching, but also like just spreading the news. But see, what is the news? Is the news some kind of great spiritual wisdom? No, because Gemini is also associated with gossip. The news is very time sensitive, and so it's kind of disposable information. And so the opposite house, the ninth house, which Sagittarius and Jupiter rule, is about, rather than mundane knowledge, it's about abstract knowledge. It's about wisdom. It's, the God house. So it's going to be something that is more weighty, less temporal. But going back to Jupiter and Gemini, Jupiter is in its detriment in Gemini, because the sign that Jupiter rules, Sagittarius, is the opposing sign. So because of this, Jupiter is not functioning optimally in Gemini. But because of the nature of Jupiter, because it's a benefic planet, it really can't go wrong. It's kind of like Venus, where even when there are afflictions, even when it's not in its perfect sign, it still is going to have beneficial qualities quite a bit. So, in talking about Jupiter being in its detriment, what we're talking about here is the fact that Gemini is thirsty for knowledge, eternally curious, and Jupiter expands everything it touches. So, needless to say, a person that has Jupiter in Gemini may even read the cereal boxes. They're just so into reading everything that they can get their hands on that there's not enough discrimination. So, if you're like me, who has Jupiter in Gemini, you might one day be walking down the street and you'll be thinking of something, mundane that you read from some silly source, and that is filling your head. So along these lines, one thing that somebody with Jupiter and Gemini can do to make sure that they take advantage of this placement and draw the most luck they can have, or good juju to them, is to engage in amassing knowledge that can produce something of value in their life. Mundane knowledge, because I mentioned that Gemini can be about, or the third house can be about mundane knowledge, the house that Gemini rules. And that's just knowledge to navigate the world. There's important, there's a value to that. But the problem is that Gemini has a hard time when Jupiter is the placement to decide whether or not to accept one thing versus the other. I mentioned writing, and it's possible that people with Jupiter and Gemini are naturally gifted in this area, or at least interested. So definitely, if you've always kind of harbored a desire to write something, don't let the idea of, oh, well, I don't know if I will be accepted by a publisher, to stop you from doing it. First of all, write for the sake of writing. It's like any form of creative exercise. Don't do it just for the glory because you think you're going to have other people see you and you're going to become famous. Sometimes you just have to express that, and that opens doors in different ways. And even on a small scale, you never know. You can start a blog and you're doing it mainly for yourself, or if you have a small group of people who are interested in the same thing as you are, and you just have the ability to write about it in an entertaining way, and it can grow. But you're coming from a very genuine place where it's not just about self-aggrandizement, it's about wanting to do something to express yourself and to put it out in the universe, in written form. And you can always self-publish too. So if you have something that you really want to write about that is kind of like a dream of yours, don't make excuses for why you shouldn't do it. You might find that by doing it, it opens new doors for you. Sometimes I read about people who are elderly who write their autobiography. And, maybe they are thinking that it's going to catch on, but at least their family will have this thing to cherish. So, other things that we can talk about that relate to luck and that sort of thing. Jupiter is Jove, and you probably have heard the you probably know of the adjective jovial, and that means lighthearted, and things like that. This is, enjoying laughter. This is one of the things with Jupiter in Gemini. The person may have that kind of spirit. They might try to cultivate that kind of spirit of not taking life too seriously. And, it's almost like, because Jupiter enjoys that sense of, I was going to use the word pleasure because, but I don't want to step on the toes of Venus, because Venus is associated with pleasure, but we can just say the good times, cultivating, pleasurable experiences is okay. And so that is going to magnify that with Gemini, and really the philosophy of life, that life is meant to be following your bliss and being happy. And this may seem kind of a no-brainer, but think about people who are very serious in life, and I think sometimes they believe that that is how you take life seriously, by being serious, when in fact, I don't think that's the case at all. I think that when you celebrate life, and not, talking about like a party, but just having a lighthearted spirit most of the time, that you are honoring life, that you are saying that life is good. The other thing, too, is just the fact that Jupiter is about, talking about the ninth house connection, expansion geographically and also culturally. So in Gemini, it would really be specifically about language. So this is learning different languages can be something that people with Jupiter and Gemini really find is quite enriching in their life. And also, to another extent, well, I would even say traveling, but traveling with that mental kind of a bent, where it's not just about being on a cruise and sipping drinks with umbrellas in them, but maybe being among the people, just like we were talking about, well, I did this over again, so I just admitted that I mentioned this in my other video. But Gemini rules the third house, which is the local area. And Jupiter, being the ruler of the opposite house, is ruling foreign travel. So somebody who is traveling, who has Jupiter in Gemini, will naturally, I think, gravitate towards those local communities. So, sometimes people who are experts in travel will recommend that to people. Don't just go to touristy places. Go and into the neighborhoods. And, I think about where I live in downtown Chicago. I don't live in downtown Chicago, but I live near Chicago. When people go downtown, when people come to Chicago, they go downtown. They don't go to the different neighborhoods a lot of times. And that's where you can see, it's the microcosm, that you can really see how people are in a certain area. And that to me is more fascinating than the landmarks sometimes, because those are, those have their own place. But you really get into the nitty-gritty when you're in the outer kind of areas. And so, but also that idea of learning, because people with Jupiter and Gemini are lifelong learners. And so, whether it's learning language, whether it's traveling, if you are traveling, it's good for you to learn the history of the places that you're traveling, not just go on the rides. That's kind of like symbolic for saying, visiting the Eiffel Tower, but not really learning, okay, well, how did it come about, the Eiffel Tower? When was it built? That's the kind of thing that Jupiter and Gemini wants to know. There's an insatiable curiosity with Jupiter and Gemini. The trick is to filter out the trivial and really amass information that serves you and that serves others. Because Jupiter and Gemini can be quite talkative, even to the point of going overboard. So that kind of thing has to be taken into consideration, because you don't want to, if you just start saying a whole bunch of things, it may get lost in the shuffle. And you want to be able to do something that you want to express things that are going to be distilled knowledge, not kind of haphazard. By the way, just a little tip for those people who are Jupiter and Gemini folks interested in learning other languages. Maybe you haven't. Duolingo, or lingo, I said linguo. Duolingo is free. And I was doing it several years ago when they didn't have that many languages. I think typical of Jupiter and Gemini, started learning like 3 languages at once. And now they have a whole bunch of other ones. So this is a free way to practice, expanding your vocabulary. I think it can be very good for even the English language, because the English language is so influenced by other languages. So anyway, I hope that you enjoyed this, and if you'd like a private reading where I can see what house your Jupiter is in as well. That's the cool thing about the astrological chart, is that you can like really analyze things just looking at the sign of what planet is in a particular sign, but what house is that planet, and then what kind of aspects are made to that planet. And it's just like layers of an onion. So the link to my website is below. Take care. Bye.